Hey guys, Doug here from Motion Raceworks. Today's episode of Motion 360 is centered around catch cans and how to vent your valve covers properly. Now we field a lot of questions on this on a weekly basis, and the short and simple of it is whether you have a small block, a big block, a 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, EFI, new motor or not, all catch can setups stand to follow the same principles. Now some engines are prone to making more crankcase pressure than others, and but at the end of the day what we're trying to accomplish is all the same thing across all engines. So even though I'm standing in front of an LS, all of these principles are going to be identical across all engines. So there's a bunch of different theories on the market and on the internet and just everywhere about how to properly do this, but one thing I think that's really consistent across a lot of high performance markets and how we have always found success is to keep it really simple. There's some cans out there on the market that go right back to the intake and have control valves and all types of things. And I'm not saying those are wrong, but if you're building a combo from scratch and you don't need to connect to the intake, by all means keep your intake disconnected from your breather system. And the reason why is you're basically relying on control valves and different things, and we can really just simplify it because your engine, whether, like I said before, regardless of what style engine it is, it's going to make crankcase pressure. And essentially what that is, it's pressure underneath the pistons in the crankcase where your oil is. And what that's doing is trying to get the oil up into places where it doesn't need to be, up through the heads, it's just keeping oil where it doesn't need to be, and that just creates a bunch of different dynamics on the engine that are bad for horsepower, and they're bad for longevity of the engine and everything else in between. So because you have pressure already there, all we're trying to do is get that pressure out and capture the particulate oil from it and also vent the pressure out of it. So for what we do and what our customers do and what is just successful across the board is to run a simple 2-port catch can. So we sell one, there's nothing groundbreaking about it, it's just a nice simple catch can. We run it on all the combos we build and race. Port on each side, filter. The catch can is actually baffled, and then it has a drain on the bottom. So the drain, after every so many miles, you drain it out. Very simple. Some people's routine and maintenance will be more depending on how your engine's set up. That's just something you have to find out on your own. But the main thing is we're taking vent lines from your valve covers straight to this port. So Brady, if you want to come over here. There's a bunch of different theories on valve covers, and it's pretty simple as well. The main thing you want to do is put the fitting that you're going to run at the top of the valve cover, and the reason why is most engines will build up oil inside this valley here. And so if you build up oil inside this valley and you have your fitting low here, it's going to be more prone to pushing that oil out when you stab the gas and take off and launch. All the G-forces are going to try and push it out. A lot of engines really like to have the fittings up front, but we've been doing these LS valve covers for quite some time, and up top in the back we seem to get away with it just fine. It doesn't create any excess oil into the catch can. So the other important factor in all of that is that you baffle your valve cover, and what that's doing is it's making sure that only air is coming out of these fittings and not oil. So these fittings, again, just like our catch can, nothing legendary and groundbreaking, just follow the same nice simple principles that we're after with what we're trying to do. So when I say that we baffle our fittings, it's pretty simple. We take these standard castings, we drill a hole again at the top, and then we're just basically taking this fitting and welding it from the backside. That's kind of a little fabricator's tip. It keeps all that ugly weld. Even the best welder, it's kind of unsightly when you have a nice billet or cast valve cover that's polished or powder coated to have weld there. So we always weld it from the inside and the bottom. That makes it really easy. You can almost fusion weld it, though I would suggest you put some filler in it. It just makes it a stronger weld. But the main point here is that if this is open right here and pressure is coming from your crankcase, it's going to be more apt to push oil straight out there, and just under typical forces and all of that, you're going to get a direct stream of oil, and what that's going to do is fill up your catch can faster. So you can do something as simple as this. This is just a piece of aluminum sheet metal that's bent, and you're basically just going to cover that port there. And so what that does is it creates kind of a barrier, so it just makes it harder for oil to get through. So your air and your pressure is going to go underneath there and over there. And so that's a really simple concept. All you're doing is creating a barrier or a block for that direct stream so that the air is the one that's going through there and not the oil. That keeps the catch can not from filling up, which is just a waste of oil. All we're trying to get out is the air. We're not technically trying to get the oil out of the system. And so the next point of contention that you need to consider when you're doing these is, even though this might be blocked on the bottom side underneath the fitting, you want to kind of be cognizant of where you're at in relation to all your valve train. Because if you have a bunch of oil moving around from your push rods or what have you, you don't want those direct streams to hit right where that fitting is, because that can create a bunch of excess oil going in your catch can also, which is just unnecessary, and it's going to require you to empty it all the time, and that gets annoying. So nobody wants to go through more race oil than they already go through because it's expensive. So again, you haven't heard me talk about anything to do with the intake, and the reason why is we want to keep the oil out of the intake. The factory PCV systems, pressure control valve systems, go right back into the intake from the valve cover. And all this does is it is trying to relieve the pressure, but it also grabs the oil. And a lot of some of the factory engines actually have better baffling and stuff like that to help with that. But overall, a lot of what you're seeing in engines is you're seeing intakes from the factory intakes being coated with oil on the inside, and then also your intake runners are going to be coated with oil. Not only is that bad for the tune, it's bad for longevity of the engine, and then those pressure control valves can go bad, which is just it's just a lot of maintenance that doesn't need to happen. And you're basically working against itself, especially once you get into a boosted application. So when we put an aftermarket catch can on something, or we're trying to vent the valve covers, we're basically trying to do away with any of that stuff that can fail, a pressure control valve, any of that stuff. So we're completely taking the intake out of the system. Something you'll see to become a really big problem are the DI cars, the direct injection, the new LT engines, not so much the Coyote, some of the European cars. Basically what's happening is, since the fuel is going right into the combustion chambers and not through the intake, the back of the intake valve just gets crusty and old and caked up with basically burnt oil. And the reason is there's no fuel injector stream to wash the back of the valve off. So all that oil that's coming in through the PCV system is now just building up on your intake runner, on the back of that valve, and that's a problem. So basically, if you have a DI car, I suggest you get a catch can as fast as you can on that thing. It's going to be huge for its longevity, and it's just a really beneficial thing. So I'll keep this short and sweet. The basic principles you want to follow is get a nice vented catch can, whether it's from us or somebody else. It needs to have a baffle in it so that the oil doesn't have a direct stream out to the filter. Make sure that your valve covers are baffled, and be cognizant about where you put that vent at in comparison to the valve train on it. And by all means, try to keep any intakes disconnected from your catch can system. They just don't have any place in line with that. That's it. That's no matter what engine you have, those are the principles you need to do. Hook it right from your valve covers to a catch can, drain it regularly, make sure everything is baffled, the bottom of that fitting and the catch can, and you'll be a lot happier camper. That's all a boosted engine or any high performance engine needs. So anyways, this is another episode of Motion 360. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope this helped and you can apply it towards your build. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned, there's more to come.